it's quite complicated to be friends with Eastern European. But in the moment when you become friend, Eastern European, Russian, Moldovan, whatever, in the moment when you become friend, that's almost forever. And all these things that, hey brother, I will do a lot of things for you, he's really working. And people are really trying to help you. It's not just words.
Welcome to Locales Unknown. This podcast gives you the tools you need to choose your next travel destination and the tips you want to be able to explore like a local. Here are your hosts, Chris and Winfield.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Locales Unknown. I'm your host, Chris, joined here by my great co-host, Winfield, who just got back recently from a trip over to Eastern Europe with our good friend, Matt Alizio. Shout out to Matt. And during that trip, they stopped off at Moldova, or I should say in Moldova, and had a great guide show them around not only Moldova, but the breakaway republic of, I'm going to butcher this, hold on, Transnistria. Winfield will correct me on that in just a little bit. But so they managed to convince the guide to come on, and by they, I mean Winfield. And in this episode, we get to interview Nicolai. We get to talk about Moldova. We get to talk about what they were able to do, all the great sites, and hear more about Winfield's trip. So, Winfield, how badly did I pronounce that breakaway republic?
No, you were spot on there. No need to be self-conscious whatsoever. As Chris said, Transnistria and Moldova, shared history, same umbrella, two separate countries, depending on who you ask. And that's breakaway republic is a key word there. And we're going to get into that, amongst other things. Really a unique landscape. And Nicolai is the perfect entree to these two places that are really off the beaten track. And they give listeners some insights into just what we are going to be doing on this podcast, because this is Locales Unknown. And to most people, they might not be familiar or have any background about these places. So this is an episode where you're really going to learn something about a corner of Europe that's often undiscovered. So without further ado, here's our episode with Nicolai. Hello, everyone. Today we're here with Nicolai Chirnev. We met in Transnistria / Moldova, which we'll get into the semantics of what that means. He is an excellent guide. He took us all over both countries. I was traveling at the time with my friend Matt Alizio, and the insights and the places that we saw, we were blown away by. But why don't you give us a bit of background, Nicolai, about not only yourself and how you got interested in traveling and showing groups around, and also tell us a bit about your experiences in traveling to other countries.
Hello, Winfield. Hello, everybody. Thank you for this opportunity. You're right. Actually, most of the people that are coming to Moldova, a big part of them, they don't know even a brief history, let's say, of Moldova. I would say a lot of people don't know where is Moldova in the map. What is completely okay, because Moldova is not definitely the most important country, let's say, in the world. So why visitors would theoretically be interested in Moldova? First of all, Moldova is famous being the least visited country, and actually some people actually prefer that. You know, at a certain point of your traveling, you just get rid and you are just satisfied with all these gems you stay, all these queues waiting for all these Eiffel Towers and so on. I'm not saying it's not beautiful, definitely beautiful. But at a certain point of your traveling, you definitely want to some relaxing tour, just you and tour guide, and just to enjoy places without thousands of people taking pictures around. And definitely Moldova is what Moldova is offering, that we have world famous underground wine cellars, and definitely a big part of them, especially Americans that I work with, they prefer to visit Transnistria because there is a glory of Transnistria as official part of Moldova in its unrecognized breakaway republic, which has very complicated history. And I would say those people who are traveling in Eastern Europe, they definitely know that. The most important thing they should know, it's very complicated here about history, about the culture, and Transnistria is one of the regions considered the last Soviet territory, let's say. And that's okay. This is what we have. Of course, it's about tragedy. Of course, it's about all this kind of social conflicts, political conflicts, first of all. Of course, Eastern Europe is a territory where two powers are always colliding and fighting for. I'm talking about the Western power, whatever is represented by West, the United States, the Western Europe, European Union, and East, what is always represented by Russia. So, in this perspective, those who are interested to understand how things are going in Europe and what can be possibly complicated and also interesting in this sense, Moldova is offering the best chance, I think. And what the most important is absolutely safe. Whatever was going here, whatever is going here for the tourists, it's absolutely nice, safe, and quiet.
I think this is awesome because our podcast is called Locales Unknown. So you hit the nail on the head. The fact that there's no long queues or it's not a typical one you're going to find in a guidebook. So the fact that you're able to jump on here, shed some light, we really appreciate it. And I think it's definitely right up our alley with this. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. You're one of the tour guides in the area taking people around both, right?
Yes, definitely. I am.
That's awesome.
Yes.
So because it's so, we'll call it off the beaten path, the first question that popped up in my head is, how is it that, you know, you're able to land these clients coming in? Is it something that you book in advance, or is people just booking once they're on the ground in the area? Is it passing through, or is it main destination?
Of course, it depends from tourist to tourist, from country to a country. But definitely, I would say again, with mostly with Americans I'm working with, those are people who are planning way before. I would say weeks before, even months before, and they know exactly what they should visit, what day they go, this place, that place, and so on. This is what I really appreciate, because as a tour guide, I prefer the guy to tell me exactly, okay, Nicolai, I'm interested to see this, this, and that, and that's perfectly working. And of course, definitely there is a percentage of people who just, hey, let me be amused for what I'm going to see. And already now it's my job to offer, to explain, okay, I ask all the time, what are your preferences? Do we put the emphasis of a history on the culture, or some kind of Disneyland, whatever, just to relax? Yes, there are some people who are choosing this suddenly to be amused, let's say.
Yeah. So how did you jump into that line of work?
What do you mean?
How did you get into being a tour guide within the area? Is it something you wanted to do? You kind of fell into it, or?
Got it. Well, when I was studying at school, I just realized there are several subjects I'm interested in. I hated math, chemistry, all that precise science, let's say. And then I just realized, hey, I like history, I like geography, I like English actually. And I just realized, hey, actually, why I wouldn't go to Chisinau to study? And I was studying, I was graduating a master's degree on the history. What is the reason? I don't know. You know, there are some people that like their job and they don't even know what is the rational explanation, what is the rational reason they do this. So I think one of the persons I am. Then I was studying also tourism, and I just realized that tourism is everything what I need in my life, because you know what is creating the strongest connection between a tour guide and traveler, between me and the tourist I have, is we share the same passion. I also like to travel, so Winfield will prove. I was taking also pictures. I was interested to see also places, you know, and all the time it's all evolving, it all changing. Every minute is changing. Chisinau, our capital, is changing. New buildings are appearing. All buildings are destroying. That's okay. Country, city is like an organism, is going to change all the time. So, as I said, first of all, I like to travel as tourists coming to our country, and then I just realized, hey, why not? Of course, we cannot avoid this discussion of money, and to be a tour guide is quite well-paid job. From another hand, it's very seasonable job, especially in the least visited country. Well, we have from April till I think September more or less tourism, and then it's dead. That's why to be a tour guide, you have to be very passionate about the history of your country, and then to do what you like to do. And they say the most perfect job is a job you like. So
perfect. Sounds like it fits.
right.
No, that's exactly right, and also just encapsulated what really gave me the passion for travel. Excuse me. Growing up,
Yep.
From age 7, I had my nose and my whole face in atlases all the time. I was always learning about capitals. I was learning about other countries and primary imports, exports, things of that nature. And that really drives a passion, because once you see those countries on a map, you want to go there. You want to meet the people, you want to interact, and you want to see how your perceptions are altered or how they are challenged from what your initial thoughts might be. So that's really key. And so take us a bit through. Nicolai was very kind to come pick Matt and I up over in Ukraine, in Odessa, and we drove through the land border into Transnistria, which, as Nicolai said earlier, is a breakaway republic, only recognized by 3 other breakaway republics: South Ossetia, Abkhazia, and Nagorno-Karabakh. And I have to admit, going through a border of a country that I don't necessarily know if it's a country or not, kind of on edge, but you took care of it beautifully. So give us a little bit of insight into getting through there and getting into Tiraspol, please.
Yeah, so first of all, it's quite common thing to meet tourists in Odessa or in Yash in Romania, and definitely understand Moldova is not the country tourists are going exactly. I mean, flying from the US, there is not even direct flights between the United States and Chisinau. That's why Moldova is often being combined with Ukraine and Romania. What's completely okay. Most of people are doing this Eastern European tour, so this is what happened with us. Mm-hmm. Also, just because Transnistria somehow it's on the way from Odessa to Chisinau, and I think being the most popular again within American tourists, I would say, and definitely among most of the tourists. Transnistria is attracting, I would say, thousands of people just because of this legal status. What officially they are part of Moldova, but well, they are not obeying Chisinau. Let's say Tiraspol is not obeying Chisinau in any way. And I know this what I'm saying to tourists. Some of them they know, but I know perfectly that the State Department is not recommending American tourists to go to such places as Transnistria, and I definitely understand why, because there is no diplomatic power there. Nobody can represent American part, let's say. American embassy doesn't have any influence in Transnistria. Chisinau doesn't have any influences, but still, it's mostly a political situation. Caused by the language. It's typical thing. I would say Balkan countries, Eastern Europe is generally the region where we still divide. This is my territory. This is your territory. This is my language. Don't teach me your language. My culture is better than your culture, and all that stuff. And somehow it makes our people very kind of patriotic, but very often this patriotism can lead to very ugly things like nationalism, which never been good. It's very good to be patriot, but it's no need to divide nations and to hate each other. What I like about Moldovans, if even we have this let's say conflict with Transnistria, it's not on the social level, it's only political one. So what is the idea? The eastern part of Moldova, what will be later called Transnistria, was created artificially in the beginning of 20th century by Soviets. By that time, Moldova was part of Romanian kingdom. Mm-hmm. And then after Second World War, both sides joined together. So why it's called Transnistria? Because the river between Moldova and that territory is called Nistru, and Transnistria means just across that river. Well, in Soviet times, as I was saying to Winfield already, it was not important. Are you Moldovan, Russian, Bulgarian, American, or Japanese? It doesn't matter. You are a Soviet citizen, first of all. And this identity of the Soviet was holding the people, I say, within the Soviet Union. And then, of course, these social differences and language, let's say linguistic difference, also always been quite strong. But I don't know, for some reasons, administration from Moscow was ignoring this problem. It's everywhere, not only in Moldova, like in Georgia, between Abkhazia and South Ossetia, like in Armenia, Baltic countries, it was the same. At a certain point, when perestroika came, and people already knew that whatever they're going to say, they're not going to be punished by Communist Party, people were protesting, and among them were Moldovans that were saying, hey, why we should speak Russian language, why we should obey Moscow, we have Chisinau, we have our language, we have our culture. So these processes were everywhere. So eventually, Moldova decided to declare Moldovan language a state language, what is somehow obvious, of course. And this eastern part of Moldova always been populated by Russians, Ukrainians, and also Moldovans, being an industrial territory. They said, hey guys, we perfectly understand the country's Moldova, it should be called Moldovan language, the state language, but what about us? We somehow historically we never been part of you, so please introduce Russian language. Well, Chisinau was kind of nationalistic by that time, and somehow you can understand that why it was this kind of hate towards Russia, Russian language, whatever is connected with Russia, because of deportations that happened in 40s. It's a very complicated story, and of course, thousands of people were suffering. And you can say, hey, what nowadays Russians have to do with that? Like, why we should blame Germans today? Come on. Germans nowadays, most of them were born way later than Second World War, but still, if it's touching you personally, it's very complicated to get rid from this emotion. And this is what happened in Chisinau in the beginning of 90s. And when Transnistria realized Chisinau doesn't want to introduce Russian language as second state language, they said, okay, we will declare our independence. So 2nd of September 1990, 1 year before Soviet Union collapse, Transnistria was declaring independence and started this conflict between Moldova in 1992 already. And everything finished up by introducing Russian army, because Russians said, hey, be careful, because Russian citizens are suffering in Transnistria. And from that day till today, this conflict is called frozen conflict. Transnistria has parliament, government, president, currency, police. They're fully independent, but nobody recognizes them. Even Russia doesn't recognize the territory. And yeah, this is quite typical story. I wouldn't say that our story is way more different than what happened in Caucasus region and Balkan region is all the same. Complicated, it's not obvious which is a solution. If that solution would exist, that will be found dozens of years ago. But sometimes I reach the conclusion that the best for this situation is just don't touch it. Because the status quo that exists nowadays in Transnistria is perfect for everybody from the political point of view, but of course, as usually, people are suffering, being divided on this is my territory and this is not your territory. This is a real patriots and they are fake patriots. All the same, let's say.
Yep. Right, and I think that's kind of hard, at least for Americans, to understand that kind of not only necessarily hatred, but just being pitted against somebody who's across the street from you or across an arbitrary line, whether it be a navigable river or an arbitrary land border. And that was something that really struck me when I was there. Also, what you were saying about how Russia doesn't recognize Transnistria, but Transnistrians have Russian passports. They can vote in Russia. So quite a few internal contradictions there, which really struck me as paradoxical.
Yeah, well, till today, the third part of Transnistrian population in Transnistria living 500,000 people officially. In Moldova living about 3 million. Third part are Russians, third part are Ukrainians, and third part are Moldovans, let's say. So all of them are having Transnistrian passport, which is outside of Transnistria, doesn't work for anything. It doesn't work. It's not recognized. That's why a big part of them, they can apply Russian citizenship, and they successfully got that, as they can also apply Moldovan passport. So having Russian passport, of course, you can vote. Actually, now I think by September there are some Duma elections in Russia. I'm not sure. I have to check, because on the radio the 2 days before I was in Transnistria, I was hearing that in that school, in that place, there are going to be elections. So you go. I mean, Transnistrian people have to choose which is the closest voting section, so they're going to vote. Yes, it's a paradox, but politically there is a crisis. They blame Chisinau, but still, if they want to leave Transnistria, they have to fly. They have to fly through Chisinau, let's say, and they have to have Moldovan passport, of course, or Russian passport. They have salaries. They have pensions paid by Russian Federation. So, yeah.
So, given those blurred lines of the situation, what is it like at the border? Winfield, I know you experienced this firsthand, but is it an official border crossing, even though you're just going across the river, being that it's unrecognized for the majority?
Well, yeah, the border is a bit weird, actually, and this is what we experienced also with Matt and Wilfield crossing the border between Ukraine and Moldova, because actually there is not kind of border between Moldova and Ukraine, because it's already Transnistria on that side. So when we go from Chisinau to Transnistria, we have to cross three borders, I would say. The Moldovan one that usually doesn't care about us, because we go to another part of Moldova for them. This in between, there are Russian peacekeepers that are making sure that everything is fine. From 1992, they are there, accordingly to this international agreement. And then the third border, which is official kind of border with Transnistria, we had to get outside of the car. We present our passport. We say how much we are going to stay in Transnistria. We can stay there. I can stay in Transnistria 3 months. Americans can stay in Transnistria till 3 months, without visa or something like this. They give you the piece of paper where it's written your name, family name, date of birth, and till what time you're standing there. If we stay, for tourism, let's say, if we just want to see Bender and Tiraspol, they give us kind of visa on the paper for 12 hours. But if you want to stay more, it's easier. You say the address and that's it. Never been a problem to cross the border with Transnistria. There is one detail. When you come from Ukraine, there is no Moldova. I mean, it's Transnistria already. So there is a mixed Moldovan-Ukrainian border. So when you are crossing Ukrainian border and you say, hey, I'm outside of Ukraine, you have to go to the official office from Moldova, because if you don't know that, you will have a problem when you will fly out of Chisinau, because there is no entry stamp for you in Moldova, because you already enter Transnistria, what is kind of Moldova, but not really. So it's a bit tricky, this part. But again, if you know all this, that's why you need tour guide, I think, because all these connections.
So is that something that you? Oh, sorry to interrupt you. Is that something that you tell your people before coming over? If you're planning to go to both areas, be prepared for this. Just want to make sure that if anyone listening is preparing to go to Moldova and the other areas, that they come prepared.
Yeah, I still believe the best way to visit also Transnistria is to come through Chisinau from Moldova, and then you don't have that kind of problem, let's say. But still, it's not a problem. Come on, eventually it's Europe, everything is organized more or less. So yes, it's a bit kind of complicated, but the one thing when you cross Ukrainian, Moldova, Transnistrian border, you have to have this Moldovan stamp. It's nothing bad happens. You can get it late in the airport, but then you have these discussions, how you get in Moldova, all that stuff. It's a bit complicated. This is what we did actually with Winfield and Matt, but my suggestion is to come through Chisinau and then no discussions.
Exactly, and that's what is key is Nicolai specifically took us over to another window where they double-checked our entry stamps, but they also stamped us into Moldova. Because what's counterintuitive is when you're leaving Transnistria, there isn't any exit, because Moldova thinks you're already in Moldova because it considers it one country. And I know we already said that, but I just want to make sure that the listeners are hear that again, because it really confused me. And we had already been through, that was our third border of the day, I guess, right? So it is something that's it's not there aren't many examples of that in the world.
Yeah, just to clarify the things,
mhm.
Transnistria is not stamping that. That's why you are kind of Moldova, but because Transnistria cannot stamp your passport, you are not officially in Moldova. So this is a problem, let's say. Yeah.
Exactly. Thank you. That is a really key point, and that is something that there's a lot of speculation about on blogs and on travel websites. Because while some people have done it, unless you have a professional such as Nicolai, you're not going to know that until you're there. And if you can either speak Russian or Romanian or Moldovan, which unfortunately I cannot, it's definitely more complicated. So.
This is, by the way, a crucial thing about this. Very often, Americans coming to Eastern Europe, they expect everybody to speak English, but it's not working. That's why it's normally okay because most of the world is speaking English, but still Eastern Europe is way behind that. So the reason why I need the tour guide is because it's communication. Because be ready on the border, nobody speaks English, and maybe you'll show like, hey, he or something. But just to make it simple about this situation with the stamp, just when you're crossing the Ukrainian border, say, I need Moldovan stamp. That's it. So they're going to show you that.
I think we have that issue all over the world, to be honest, Nicolai. We think that everyone just knows English and it should be easy. And when you're confronted with situations that's not, sometimes you lose your footing. But so when you're doing these guided tours, how long would you recommend that someone stays? Winfield, I haven't had a chance to catch up with you regarding your trip, how long you were there for, but are we talking about maybe a 1 day, 2 days? Is this something that you do extended time with?
What we did was very rushed. We did 10 countries in a little over 2 weeks, thereabout. So that was a really, really fast pace. What I recommend personally, because as soon as we got to Transnistria and Moldova, we immediately wanted to spend more time, not only with Nicolai and just seeing more of the country, but there's some really very interesting bunkers that we didn't have time to go to that he can tell you about. There's some beautiful castle towns further north along one of the rivers. I can't remember if it's the Dniester or not. But we were in Chisinau. We went to Malisti Beach, which is the largest wine cellar in the world, as he alluded to briefly earlier. So there's really a lot to see. So, I mean, I would recommend people to spend at least a week between the two countries, one country, depending on who you're asking, of course, from a perspective, because there really is more than meets the eye at first instance. And you really won't find too much information about these places online apart from Chisinau and maybe Transnistria. I think they're a little bit less well known. I definitely didn't know about them. So it's something that once you get there, you want to be able to have time to open new doors. How do you feel about that, Nicolai?
Well, I will have definitely about this. I will have a suggestion for future travelers. Whenever you travel in the world, please Google about the places. So do not be disappointed about something or don't have a kind of expectations, let's say, about how many days to spend in Moldova. Of course, as a Moldovan tour guide, I should say, guys, forget Romania and Ukraine. It's boring. Moldova is the best. But yeah, I've always tried to be sincere, and I definitely understand. There is a reason why Moldova is the least visited country in Europe, and I wouldn't say that we have a spectacular mountain area that Romania has, for example. We don't have the big, huge cities, big towns, let's say, as Ukraine has. But still, Moldova is a unique region, and I think, and my experience is saying that 2-3 days usually is completely enough, because you already said it, Winfield, you're right. People come to Moldova to visit these underground wine cellars. Some of people saying, hey, but I'm not drinking. Trust me, this is not about drinking. You have to see this underground winery, what was a Soviet mine. It's huge, 200 kilometers total length. They have streets, lights, and all that stuff. It's
underground city. It's amazing.
Wow.
Yes, absolutely. It's called Krikova Winery and Mileștimi. They're two state-owned huge wineries. So if it's not about the wine, it's about underground area. The Chisinau city tour is definitely, I think, every meeting with a country, starting with the capital. Of course, Chisinau is not all Moldova, but still it will give you a brief perspective what Moldova was going through, which historical periods, let's say. Then definitely is Older Hay complex, which is the biggest natural attraction of Moldova. Because we are quite flat country, Older Hay is something unique for us, let's say. There's several monasteries, and again, it's not about religion, it's about how they look. This religious part of Moldovan society is also quite important. Then Transnistria, definitely. Then we have some places as the town on the north is called Soroka. They got a fortress. They have a so-called Gypsy Hill. There is a Roma community in Soroka, which looks just amazing. Just Google Roma in Soroka or something like this, and you will see what means wealthy Roma people that have a palaces way better than most of your houses. So it's something still unique. So as I said, Chisinau city tour with wineries, and then Older here with the monasteries and Soroka, then Transnistria, then we have Gagauzia region. So most of these tours have always been about culture and history. This is a, like, let's say, personal experience that you have, and the tour guide is usually connecting you to the country and trying to give you the best perspective what is the country. And I think definitely 3-4 days, of course, it's not completely enough, but I think just to understand what is Moldova, it should be enough.
Indeed, and I know Chris can sympathize with this because he is much more of an adventure traveler than I am. Can you recommend anything for true adventurers, that whether it's I know you said the mountains are beautiful, but not necessarily what they have in Romania or other places. And any, I mean, I know the bunkers definitely are probably a lot of them are unexplored. What do you have advice wise in that department?
Well, definitely. I would suggest perhaps that we have also the monasteries. Some of them are abandoned on the Dnister River, Saharna and Sipova, let's say. And these are the places where you just put the backpack and you walk like 1 hour, one direction to the waterfalls. Monasteries are usually Moldova is before the monks in medieval times were trying to create this place for praying the god as far as possible from civilization. Until today, those places are in the middle of nowhere. And if you just you are full of all this experience with people, you want to be alone in the way, of course, next to the tour guide, then I will suggest you this cave monasteries we have. And the bunkers, you told, now to provoke a big rush to find on Google, there are nuclear bunkers in Olishkan village in Moldova. There were 3 bunkers, and one is in Azerbaijan, one is in Belarus, and one is Moldova. What is the idea? They start to be constructed by 1985, just because the Western Germany was getting as a member of NATO, and Soviets were scared, and they're thinking, oh my God, these bad guys from NATO are coming closer. So they were constructing these nuclear bunkers that in case of of course, you Americans were sleeping and dreaming to destroy all the world. So Soviets were afraid that you will attack with bombs, of course. As you were scared that Soviets will attack, it's Cold War times. I understand, it's okay. So they were constructed these underground bunkers, 11 floors. Of course, they were officially constructed a factory, but in the night they were constructing bunkers. So your satellites spying Soviet territory will see a nice factory, but in reality it was a nuclear bunker. So in case the bomb is falling down, it was kind of a cork from concrete. So if even it's direct strike, this bunker is going to resist any nuclear bomb, whatever big is that. And there could hide the administration of the country, the military division, let's say, and they could hide there for, I think, at least 24 hours without being damaged by radiation, by whatever. It's fully independent with generator and so on. And in case of nuclear attack, they could press the red button and to attack whatever country was attacking the Soviet Union back. So they could survive this nuclear war. Good thing here that never been used. That's why these bunkers are abandoned, I would say, and they still represent. Coming there, you will feel yourself like very small part of the huge Soviet military machine. One of the reasons why Soviet Union collapsed, by the way, they were so afraid that somebody will attack. They were funding military a lot. Good thing that it never been finished. Both bunkers were finished by 85%. The equipment never been there because perestroika was working already, let's say. It was everywhere. And, Gorbachev was personally kind of against the army. So the funding was very, very slow. But still, that cost about 30 million rubles, what is maybe $40 million by that time. It's a big money, of course. But Soviet Union never been counting money to military defense or attack, whatever. So I suggest you that it's very adventurous, and if you're not careful enough, you can fall down 60 meters and die. So if that sounds adventurous, come to Moldova.
It sounds more dangerous than adventurous. But I love how you beat me to that question all the time, Winfield. I was just gonna reiterate, Nicolai. So that location's actually a spot that you can go, and is it well visited, or is it something that you just need to find out on your own?
Well, you can see where is that on Google Maps, of course, and you can go theoretically there. But be ready, there are some strange people. Some people from the village, they are cutting that bunkers, of course, and just because it's huge bunkers, it's the work is very slow. They are not mostly damaging anything. But you definitely need a tour guide. But also there is a chance that not most of tour guides, they don't know that place, let's say. So you have to find the right tour guides or something like this. If even you go by yourself, it's also a good idea, let's say.
It sounds like we're talking to the right tour guide.
Well, yes, I think so.
There's definitely places in every country that I've been to that are a little bit less known, but fun as well. Like when I was in Bali, there are abandoned airplanes in the middle of some rice fields that you're not going to hear about very often. But if you search for them, on the maps, at least Google Maps, it's not going to show you the plane. It's going to show you the GPS locations. And I myself have gone through the adventure of trying to find these things. So when I'm in Moldova, I know what I'm doing. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, exactly. We don't hide anything. Come to
us. That's great. Now, can you talk a little bit about the food? I'm so curious, all this adventuring and running around and border crossing. What are we going to eat when we're finally sitting down?
Yeah, definitely. In this case, also coming from Romania, they noticed that Moldovan food is actually very similar to Romanian one. It's not a surprise because we've been one of the cultural space, let's say. So Moldovan as Romanian food, as Eastern European food, is very caloric. It has a lot of calories. So if you have this sitting way of life in the office, of course, it's going to make you big, let's say. But Moldova always been agricultural country. That's why people, the traditional food was appearing in the villages where people are working hard all the time, working a lot. They need the calories. So there are three types. What I would say local food. Let's say it's first of all chicken soup that here is called zeama. So when you work physically a lot, you have to eat liquid a lot. So the soups are very popular here, zama. The second stuff are called mama liga, and what is looks like Italian polenta, something like this. This porridge from the corn is also easy to make, and it was very fast. You mix it with brinza, what is a local cheese, with meat, all that stuff. And the third thing is placinta, so-called. Placinta is baked rolls with cheese also inside, with potato, with meat. So Moldovan food is quite simple, but as I said, had a lot of calories, but it's very tasty, of course.
Nice. No, definitely. And one thing that I found that was everywhere is sour cream, whether it's pureed or whether it's very light. And I tried all three of the dishes you mentioned. They were all delicious. What was surprised me the most, as you said about the polenta, is that it came alongside of everything, but it was very delicate. So it wasn't kind of in slices as you think of Italian style. It was more of as a side dish, but it was also the meat was woven into it, which I thought was pretty intricate.
Right. So polenta itself, this mama liga, is not tasty. You have to mix it all the time. And comparison maybe with Italian food, Moldovan cuisine is way more simple, let's say. Because imagine people had to work. They don't have time to all these slices, whatever. They were cooking fast, eating, and running to work. So.
Exactly. And one of the desserts that really struck me as well with kind of prunes with homemade whipped cream, but the cream wasn't sweet. It was kind of an unsweetened, whipped cream, for lack of a better comparison. But it didn't have quite the consistency of the sour cream puree, but it was similar.
Yes, Moldovan cuisine can surprise you all the time. So
sounds
very
hearty.
good.
It sounds good.
It's very hearty.
Yeah.
And I remember you said at one point, and I don't know if you were joking about this, but the reason the Soviet Union kept Moldova was because of the wine. The wine from Elisti Mich and Krikova, which unfortunately didn't have a chance to visit, definitely I can see why they kept it around. Why are Moldovan wines not really known on the world stage? They're really kind of a secret, as we've said before, off the beaten track kind of knowledge that people in the industry would have.
yeah, it's a good question. Actually, at the same time, it's a very delicate and painful question for us because Moldova is an agricultural country and wine industry is what we have the most, the growing grapes and so on. So those of you who want to understand what was the importance of Moldova about wine, wineries and grapes and so on, just analyze the map of Soviet Union or even of Europe together with Russia, with all Russia, and see on the map where is Moldova. Even for you guys, you can see here. So the idea is that Moldova is very, very small country. Although Moldova was producing every second bottle of wine within Soviet Union. With all this Armenian cognac, with all this Georgian wine, Crimean wine, whatever, Moldova being tiny territory, 33.7 thousand square kilometers. It's in 500 times smaller than Russia. It was producing every second bottle in Soviet Union. The reason for that is climate. Climate, the relief, it's perfect. The temperature is quite hot. In the winter, it's relatively cold. We have the slopes. So for the vineyards, it's very good to have the slopes. The soil is kind of sandy because, millions of years ago, Moldova was covered by the Sarmatian Sea. So it's absolutely amazing, perfect. I know for sure that, for example, Georgia, to produce a famous Georgian wine, they buy the grape from Moldova also. Not all of that, but still. What is the idea? Yes, about Soviet Union, Moldova, and so on. Well, we were exporting millions and millions, just to understand, in Soviet Union time and in nowadays, till 2004, Moldova was exporting to Russia about, I think, 52 million bottles a year. And then politically again, when Moldova became pro-European, what now is Ukraine, Moldova, we became pro-European countries. Russia just gave us embargo, let's say. And actually, eventually, it was a good point because our markets were blocked. We went in the economical crisis, of course, because, when your economy is based on agriculture, agriculture is based on the wine production, and wine production is based on the export to Russia, and Russia is blocking that, you got problems. This is what happened, but eventually, within several years, we had to think not only about the quantity of the wine, but of the quality of the wine. That's why nowadays the biggest importers of Moldovan wine is China, for example, Czech Republic, Poland, and now coming to a question why it's complicated to find Moldovan wine, not even in the United States, but even in Europe, in Western Europe. The problem is all this French, Spanish, Italian wine from Chile, from Australia. Even you have your local wine. There is a kind of tradition for those wines. They have a fame. They are famous everywhere in the world. They were working for this fame, let's say, dozen of years. And now we have Moldova. Nobody knows about that, and they have good wine. Who knows about this? So I'm sure it will take time, Moldovan wine to be famous. Especially we have a good plus that Moldovan wine is way, way cheaper. Just to understand what means cheaper, we need to maybe in Mileshti Mich, you have seen the bottle of wine starts from $2, $3, something like this. And of course, it will cost way more when we'll reach supermarket shelves in the United States. But still, when your family is buying all its history, the Italian wine, and suddenly you have Moldovan that is cheaper, you think, cheap means bad. No, Moldovan wine. I go to Italian. So But as I said, it's a matter of time till people understand, hey, Moldova is actually a great wine producer.
Exactly. So it sounds like a branding crisis. We need to have some marketing in there. Chris, I could see an opportunity for you there.
Take it international, huh?
Right. But no, and that you raise a really great point, because Matt and I went to Milisty Beach, and we both bought bottles from our birth year, 1988. I think it was $15. And I mean, you couldn't imagine getting a 33-year-old bottle of wine anywhere. I mean, in the US, I mean, that would cost you easily hundreds of dollars, even if it was the worst vintage, because you wouldn't know, right? Unless you were talking to a connoisseur or somebody who had actually tried that year. So, and that's what was really, really interesting, is that the wines, there's such a nice variety of wine for every palate, whether it was somebody who likes sweet wine, someone who likes semi-sweet, semi-dry. And it just seemed to really suit everybody that was not only in our group, but that was on the tour as well, in the cellars. So
I agree.
And what was really interesting, as you mentioned earlier, that was actually I believe a limestone mine under the Soviets. And and I know we've talked about this quite a bit, but we really can't understate how amazing this is, because we were on a series of trams underground that we just drove for miles. And one of the highlights, I would say, of the tasting is, after we had finished the tasting and all of the different courses, because you can have different packages with different food levels, etc. We interacted with the Romanian section, or Romanian speaking section of the tour, because there are two tours. There's Romanian / Moldovan and English speaking tours, and we all got on the tram, and everybody started yelling, and it was we're just I can't remember. I think I said America at one point. They're like, Moldova. I'm like, Moldavia, America. Everybody just started laughing. So the things that happen after wine, I guess. But it was it was a really nice interaction, because everybody had really enjoyed themselves, and it was quite chilly down there. It was probably 10 degrees Celsius or something. So that's coming from outside where it was 30 or something. It's a huge difference. But one thing as well that was interesting is there are a lot of different cellars for people that store their own wine there. So, for instance, there are two Americans that store their own wine, multiple Europeans, and they rent those cellars directly from the vineyard, and they return every year to try the wines, taste the wines. So it's really, we to sum it up, it's definitely something to see.
Yeah, I definitely agree about the temperatures. This is the quality of the limestone. It's plus 14 all the year round. Outside is minus 50 or plus 50. Inside is going to be plus 14 all the time, and the humidity is all the same. That's why, being a Soviet caves before, nowadays it's used as the winery. And I definitely agree. It's always fun to have wine around, so everybody starts to speak the same language. And I know that.
Exactly. Yeah, and speaking of languages, because we didn't finish that earlier. You speak 5 languages, right? Which is it blows my mind, because I can barely speak one well, let alone 2 or 3. So give us some insight about that, please.
About people speaking languages here.
Yes, and your personal experience, because you have Bulgarian ancestry as well as other heritage, right?
Yes. Well, I always say to my tourists, I'm Russian-speaking Bulgarian from Gagauzian region of Moldova. So I speak 4 languages, and always been repeating, it's nothing special about me. Most of people in Eastern Europe, at least when you are born in Moldova, you have to know, you already know 2 languages, let's say Russian and Romanian. What is good about Russian, you can speak briefly. You can understand more or less most of Eastern Europe, let's say, like Ukrainian, Bulgarian, Serbian, all these Balkan countries' languages. When you speak Romanian, it's way easier for us to start to learn English, because English is somehow based on Latin, still have a lot of words on Latin language. It's normal thing for us. And I don't know, I never been thinking about this. We are born with this, So yeah, I
Right.
would say it's quite unique.
Yes, no, exactly. Which is so counterintuitive for us, as we've said on various instances, how we have our heritage, of course. Everybody comes from somewhere in the U.S., and whether that be your native language, uh, well, it's English because that's our, as we were talking about over there. It used to be Russian, but obviously people still have their native identity, which historically, at least in the U.S., has probably been lost after 4 or 5 generations. I would say, sadly, in most instances. So it's.
But it's also, don't forget, there is a backside of this story. Yes, we have a strong identity. I am Bulgarian, or I am Moldovan, I'm Russian, and so on. You're right. For the backside of this story is that we are always fighting with each other. Let's say, for example, I am Bulgarian speaking. I'm Russian speaking Bulgarian from Moldova, and when Moldova is trying to promote some ideas, I'm thinking, hey, wait a second, why this guy should be important for me? He's Moldovan. And Moldovans say, hey, Nicolai, but you are from Moldova. I say, yes, but I'm Bulgarian. But my native is Russian. All these discussions are provoking what we have, like Gauzy autonomy, what we have Transnistria, and not just fun. People were dying there. Some of them were fighting for integrity of the country. Some of them were fighting for uh, independence of the country. So what is making us unique in the same time is destroying us. Don't forget about this. And it shouldn't be like this because, yes, you say we Americans, we speak just one language. Maybe this is one of the things that is holding you strong all together. You still have kind of identity. We're all the same. We're speaking English, if even it's not official language in the United States. But still, Americans are still following I don't know, some capitalism ideas or let's make money, doesn't matter from where you are coming. What never been a case here. People here dividing, who are you? Ah, you are German? No, 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 no. Germany is bad. I remember. You remember what was? No, no, no. Or you are Russian? No, no, no. Deportation? Stalin? No, no, no. No Russian language. That's why it's a good thing, but in the same time, it's a bad thing. That's why you can say, hey, Moldovans are unique people. They speak hundreds of languages. Look at us. We are poorest country in Europe.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, with a country as vast as the United States, our language is one of the primary things that unifies us across the board. Although we are regional, and you can definitely tell the differences wherever you are in the U.S., it is something that binds us all together for sure. As far as outside of our borders, for the most part, we are a bit spoiled, though. So I think when we hear someone speaking 5 languages naturally, when we're trying to still grasp our own, it's impressive. So.
Right.
That's absolutely true. I'm still hooked on this wine cellar former mine, though. If I can ask, maybe you said it before. What's the name of that, just so our listeners can take a look?
Well, in Moldova, there are more than I think 75 wineries. Most of them, absolutely most of them, are private owned. It means the quality of the wine is perfect. But we have 2 state owned, which are definitely worth visiting. I suggest one of those because if you visit both, they are quite the same, so it doesn't make sense. First is called Krikova Winery, the most luxury Krikova. Second one is called Mileshti Mich. This is a Guinness Records book winery with the biggest wine collection, the longest underground wine cellars. So Krikova and Mileshti Mich.
That's awesome. I think we're getting close, Winfield, to that lightning round. What do you think?
Yes, exactly. I think we are too. One final anecdote before we delve into that is Matt and I would be remiss not to recall CCP and being interviewed by the journalist in Transnistria. That was definitely one of the highlights of the trip, and totally organic experience too, because we were at this Soviet-inspired restaurant that we really enjoyed. We get local vodka, beer, everything, and all of a sudden, this journalist comes up to me and says, "Oh, you hear about the game this weekend? Would you like to be on TV?" So that was great, and thank you, Nicolai, for filming us on television. That was very kind of you.
Yeah, you got famous here. We are waiting for you.
Right. waiting for
We're gonna have to put that
return.
up on our social media as well. Maybe we'll get famous over here.
Exactly. There we go. Yeah, cross-platform it.
That's right.
So yes, as Chris alluded to, our lightning round is how we end each show, and we're basically going to ask you a series of 10 questions, and just the first thing that comes to mind. So, are you ready, Nicolai?
Yes, I am.
Okay. So, one wish, what would it be?
People from Moldova to be happy.
Very good. Which country do you want to visit the most, and why?
I think Russia, because I've been in Western Europe, never been outside of Europe generally. And I hear a lot about Russia, but I am this kind of traveler. What actually I think, Winfield, you are. We don't believe all this blah 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 on TV, radio, all that stuff. And I think Russia is way more than we think. I will suggest also to Americans, before you have any opinion about Russia or you judge Russia, whatever you have opinion about Russia, just go there first, try to understand why it's like that, and maybe eventually you understand, hey, this is what it is.
Couldn't agree more. Siberian winter might not be for everybody, but you definitely gotta peel it back one layer at a time. Russia's a massive place, beautiful people, and absolutely stunning landscape.
You know, we've mentioned it a few times already on this podcast throughout the last couple of episodes, but there's a striking difference between what you hear on the news and what's right on the ground when you're talking to regular people, regardless of the country. You know, the general theme is happiness and a striving pursuit for that. So it's definitely something that Winfield and I subscribe to, where it's don't listen to the talking heads, go experience it for yourself.
Absolutely right.
Definitely. What's one thing in Moldova you still really want to do?
I wouldn't say this one thing, but just because my job, I work mostly with the foreigners, and they more or less we visit the same places. I would like to visit Moldova from the north to the south. It's not a big country anyway. So eventually, me as a tour guide, I know there exists a huge gap in my knowledges about what is Moldova. So yeah, I think all the country is a place I would like to see here.
Oh, definitely. What's the strangest thing you've eaten?
I don't know, strangers for whom. For example, I was kind of raised with the idea that I have to eat the brain of chicken. And my mom was always repeating me that eat more and you will be clever. So sometimes I'm thinking, hey, maybe it worked out, you never know. So, but yes, chicken of brain is, of course, you have to boil the meat, of course. And this is one of the best things to taste in Moldova. But I think it's weird, perhaps, but we don't care.
It's definitely not the first thing that comes to mind, but as we said, you turned out great. So proof is in the pudding. What's your favorite thing about Moldova?
Natural. It's very natural. Whoever you are going to meet on the street in Chisinau, in the forgotten village somewhere in the middle of the forest, people are going to help you, and whatever their attitude they have to you is going to be natural. It's never faked. If they don't like you, they will say, I don't like you. If they like you, you're almost the most happy person. That's why I was saying to you guys when we were together that it's quite complicated to be friends with Eastern European. But in the moment when you become friend, Eastern European, Russian, Moldovan, whatever, in the moment when you become friend, that's almost forever. And all these things that, hey, brother, I will do a lot of things for you, he's really working. And people are really trying to help you. It's not just words. If even, again, we discuss this all the time about how do you do, thing that always when we meet with Americans, we would say these words. And we know that in it's cultural thing for the United States. For us, if we ask, how do you do? We really mean it. And we really expect somebody to say, how is your day? How is going? Tell me. If it's bad, tell me. If it's good, tell me. So answering your question, I think people are sincere. They're natural.
And that's very refreshing because we lack a lot of that, unfortunately. And not only the U.S., I'd say the Western world is getting to be that way too. It's not that same sense of sincerity. So, What's the must-see attraction in Moldova? If you could say one or two things.
Transnistria and the wineries.
Yeah, completely agree. You and I are on the same page there.
Yeah.
What one tip that you have for travelers?
As I said before, Google about places. It's no need to see all how it's looking and so on, but just analyze it, read about this. Even if it's lack of information, it's even better. And always leave the space for surprises, of course. But be ready. For example, quite often, not quite often, but maybe I told you a week ago or 2 weeks ago, we approached the Ukrainian border with some Indian guys. And then they said on the border, "Hey, but do you have visa?" And the guy said, "What? We need visa?" Like, hey, why I should check it? I mean, you have to know before to come to the country that you have to have visa. So this is what I mean. There's no need to prepare every hour, but please be
Right.
prepared before you come to the country to know what is expected. Do they ask you to cover the head when you enter the church? Please do it. Whenever you go, try to respect that country.
Exactly. Due diligence and respect. Those are two key concepts for travelers. What motivates you to travel?
My deep idea: the world is much bigger than we believe, and it hides way more surprises than we think, let's say. And I'm always curious. I think this is what is moving all travelers. They're always curious.
Yes, I think Chris would agree with that as well. That's something that motivates
I love that
me.
perspective. I absolutely love that perspective for sure. So I appreciate that answer.
What's the best way to get around Moldova transportation-wise?
I think by car. Of course, you can use public transportation, but hey, I don't suggest you Moldovan public transportation. Just believe me, it's not best experience. That's why I think the car is the best option, because Moldova is quite small. You can drive to the most northern part, to the most southern part within 5 hours. And if even the longest distance from Chisinau to touristic place Soroka, it takes 2 hours and a half. And I think the car is best option.
And if there's one experience you could relive in your life, what would it be?
Good question. I think the moment when I bought a car. I know it's a bit commercial, how to say, but I always been dreaming about car. And guys, I want to say something personal. Let's say, once I think it was like 4 years ago. I was I live in the village, and then there is a bus from the center to Chisinau, and you have to walk about 2 or 3 kilometers to that bus. And it was raining. I was carrying the heavy bag with food to Chisinau. My parents were helping me, and I just seen some guys that were 10 years younger than me. They were driving luxury Mercedeses, and it's raining, heavy bag, and I was thinking, hey, what the heck? I know languages. I am working as a tour guide, so I also want to live like them. Why I cannot? I can do that. So who is guilty? I am guilty. It's my fault. I can live better life, And then I was working quite hard. I was improving my English. I was improving my tours. I was improving my skills. And eventually, about 4 years ago, I bought a car. And that feeling that I had a car, I think I would like to relive it again. I know it's a bit sounds like a commercial thing, but this is what I will definitely suggest to people from Eastern Europe and Moldova. First of all, don't agree with the reality that you have. Always fight for better life. You deserve better life. Often traveling in Moldova, I see a lot of poor people, and I feel sorry. Some of them didn't cope because Soviet Union collapsed, and they didn't cope with this collapse. They were believing in the best country in the world, and everything disappeared, let's say. And I see very deep pain in their eyes, and they're not living anymore. They are dead spiritually, let's say. And a lot of people in Moldova are dead spiritually. A lot of people in Eastern Europe are dead. And when you're poor, you start to discuss what language is better, what territory is better, and so on. So this is what I wish for most of people in the world, always to try to have better life. And of course, to understand for better life, you have to work.
That's exactly right. Even though that's quite a poignant way to end, it's a very key point, because motivation is intrinsic, but the circumstances that you see around you, they also affect not only your outlook on life, but your ability to strive for a better future. So, but on that note, Nicolai, thank you so much. Where can we follow you, and where can we keep in touch with you, whether it's for tours or just general questions in the future?
Yeah, I think if you write in Google, I don't know, Nicolai tour guide Moldova or something like this, you will find me. I'm on Facebook, of course. I'm using it's Nicolai Chirnev. Yeah, if you write Nicolai tour guide, I think Moldova is quite a small country. Trust me, sooner or later you will get to me. So I will be happy to guide people here. This is what eventually I like the most, and I think, yeah, I'm just always wish to present my country not from best perspective, but from a real perspective. I never built my country like best country in the world. There is no need for that. You will see it by yourself. So I'm inviting you to our country.
Well, we'll definitely make sure to put your social media in the show notes so it is available for everybody. I know if and when the time comes that I step foot in Moldova, I wouldn't go with anybody else. Your perspective is incredible. Winfield was lucky enough to bring you on. We're all lucky to hear your perspective. I have to agree with your mom. The chicken brains are working. You're a smart guy, man, and I appreciate your perspective for sure. So we appreciate this time. Anyone who's interested, we'll make sure to put this in the intro and conclusion as well. Reach out to you when they're going to Moldova for sure.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Winfield. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, Nicolai. Have a great evening. Stay in touch.
I will. Thank you. Yeah, thanks. All the best.
That was a great conversation with Nicolai. Not only did we have some insights into both countries and some of the experiences that one can experience there, but we also had a really sincere take from somebody who has made it not only in his personal life, but also wants the best for his people.
Yeah, I mean, from that interview alone, it sounds like there's so much jam-packed in such small geographical area that I'm excited to go. It's not something that you normally hear, and I think this is really our bread and butter as far as locales unknown, because it's not every day you hear most people heading over to Moldova for a small amount of time or long. But Nicolai shed some great insight as far as what to do there, how long to stay, and a couple of the adventurous things. That bomb shelter, really cool. So we want to make sure that we obviously give the credit to Nicolai, and anyone who's interested in a trip that's heading in that direction and in need of a tour guide, we'll make sure to put his social media links up on our post when the episode comes out, as well as on our website. And go ahead and reach out to him if you're heading in that direction. Be sure that you use the best guide in town. So as far as everything else, guys, this podcast is for you and your travels. So if you like what you're hearing, go ahead and leave us a review. Let us know if you're interested in coming on the show or can recommend anybody who might be a perfect fit that you want to listen to. Go ahead and reach out to us. We're at contact@localesunknown.com. Or you can find us across all social media platforms. We're on TikTok, we're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, and we're on every podcast platform available. So wherever you get your podcast, we're going to be in your ears. Let us know how we're doing, guys. Thank you as always. We'll be back here next time with another great guest on Locales Unknown.